Is this an isolated incident involving one police officer, or do we in fact have a culture that condones such behavior while looking the other way? I think it's time for us all to have an aha moment. I introduce to you now Isaiah Rumblin, president of the local branch of the NAACP.
All right. Come on, Prophet.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And what makes this situation more alarming is that the officer in question is a part of the gang response unit, the unit that goes from door to door in mostly black and brown communities or neighborhoods, interacting with our residents. How are our children, parents, and even our grandparents are supposed to feel when the person they expect to serve and protect them sees that as one of America's biggest problems? How are the members of the gay and lesbian population supposed to feel when the officer who pulls up to their homes see them as sick and demented? The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is made up of some of the finest people in Jacksonville, of any other place. We applaud them and thank those officers who put themselves in harm's way to protect us. Our comments are not intended in any way to diminish the great work that the JS officers do each and every day. In fact, these comments are intended to support them. We are sure that there are many police officers here in Jacksonville who are just as disheartened by these social media posts as we are. Many of them would like to speak out against such language, but fear the backslash from a culture that has been existing in our community and in the city of Jacksonville Police Department for many of years. However, it is not fair for those officers to be negatively labeled because of the actions, or in this case, the words of a few. The culture in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office must change.
All right, Bishop.
My name, title Bishop, first name Edward, E-D-W-A-R-D, last name Robinson, R-O-B-I-N-S-O-N-C. Let us be clear, the Bible says, out of the abundance of heart, the mouth speaks. Words are not mere words. Words are a reflection of a person's feeling and overall belief system. An officer who feels this way about black people, brown people, gay people, poor people, Asian people, Hispanic couples, or any other person should not be allowed to police people. How safe should a black person feel if this officer stopped them for alleged traffic violation? How safe should a member of the LGBT community feel if this officer tells them to raise their hand? How safe should a Hispanic person feel if they call JSO for help and this officer shows up at their doorstep? What kind of society will we eventually have if we can't feel safe in the presence of one who's supposed to ensure our safety? As a result of this alleged social media finding, we are seeking the following. First, we call for a meeting with the acting sheriff to ensure that a full, impartial, complete investigation of this matter is conducted. Second, we want the sheriff to inform the community about what measures are in place to identify these types of matters when they occur, as opposed to waiting for the media to bring a 9-year-old post to their attention. Third, since we soon be electing a sheriff, we demand that both candidates, Lakeisha Burton and T.K. Waters, denounce these posts and inform the public of their detailed plans to address matters going forward. We also demand that they address what action they should take in handling this matter, and and how their administration should seek to weed out the seeds of racism and hate in a department dedicated to protect and serve its citizens.
My title is Bishop Frank, middle initial M, R-E-I-D, the third. I'm the servant bishop of all the African Methodist Episcopal churches in the state of Florida and the nation of the Bahamas. As we strive to become the bold new city of the South, or where Florida begins, we must not lose sight of other great cities whose reputations have been severely tarnished because of police officers who are now not on their police forces. Perhaps they never should have been. How many officers nationwide have been found guilty of police brutality, yet were also guilty of making racist and sexist, anti-Semitic, and homophobic comments in their social media discourse? How many situations like that could have been avoided if someone had better policed the police? My. As a nation, we witnessed the brutal torture and murder of George Floyd by a police officer who kept his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. What came out by way of his knee in less than 9 minutes was perhaps what had been in his heart for many years. Most police officers agree that Derek Chauvin was indeed a murderer. It's time to weed out the potential Derek Chauvins in JSO so that we don't end up with a George Floyd situation in Jacksonville. It's not about the color of the sheriff. It's about the culture of the agency. We are here to work with law enforcement for the safety and protection of all Jacksonville residents, regardless of race, creed, gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Let justice roll down as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream in Jacksonville. Pastor Chris McKee will come now to field any questions.
Thank you, Bishop. Any questions? Any questions? The investigation, we believe, needs to be as extensive as it has to be. Again, this has taken years for this to surface, and that's shameful. And so the investigation needs to be thorough and deep and wide. It has already been mentioned. There are tools in place to investigate what officers post. That needs to be utilized to ensure that we are tracking the thoughts and the behaviors of some of the very people who are entrusted with the protection of all of us in our community. So it needs to be deep and wide. And what we're calling for is a meeting to actually confirm that investigation and that process so that we can see this culture changed and redirected. Absolutely. It's already been mentioned. I believe Bishop Robinson lifted the reality that the Bible tells us out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so the concern that we have is if there are officers who have this type of mentality, this type of thought pattern in regards to the very populations that they are in place to protect and serve, in particular, when we talk about young people who need to be redirected from gang activity, many young people who are in our historically underserved neighborhoods, if the attitude is the problem with this country are African Americans, the very people who populate these neighborhoods, we populate these neighborhoods, we minister in these neighborhoods, then that serves for me as a cautionary tale about those young people as they engage with police officers. Can they feel safe? Can they feel like they're being redirected by someone who actually believes that in their heart, that one of the problems in this country are African Americans? whatever penalties are put in place need to be utilized. And that's up to the department to decide how those penalties work. We can have a conversation about that, but ultimately there needs to be some type of punitive result for this type of behavior. You cannot feel that you can say these sorts of things as a police officer, and you are an officer wherever you go. You are an officer at all times. You cannot say these types of things and not expect there to be some type of consequence for what you say. Why not?
Yes.
It can be as thorough as it needs to be.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's why we're here today, because it's bigger than who's the sheriff. It's the culture of the force. And that's evident because we're dealing with something that, again, came from almost a decade ago. So this is entrenched in the culture of the force, and that's part of the reason why we have come together as faith leaders and other community leaders to have this conversation, a very important conversation that we want to follow up with the current acting sheriff regarding, even before a new sheriff is elected, because that needs to happen prior to that.
Allow me to say that we're pushing for a meeting.
Yep.
With the candidates, we're pushing for a meeting, whether it was going to be the sheriff, because we need to put together the kind of mechanics and methodology for this investigation. Let us be clear about what our concerns are. JSO has long been accused of being the fox that guarded the henhouse. These folks that we're talking about conducting this investigation drank beer, barbecue, and party together. We want a thorough investigation. We want an honest investigation, but we want to sit down as a community to talk about how that investigation should be conducted. It must be. It must be. I think it's long been that kind of culture, a culture that has police officers coming into the black community, not as people who are sworn to serve and to protect, but as warriors. They are here to protect us and to police us fairly and honestly. It is unfortunate that for so long they have come to us and treated us like we are strangers. They come to us in our community as strangers in a strange land. The problem is that there is a tremendous lack of trust, transparency, and accountability between JSO and the black community. I advise you, look at the UNF Michael Binder's polls. They all say the same thing. Black people don't trust JSO. And there are not enough black police officers. What about that? Only 245 black police officers out of 1,534. 30,000 arrests, most of them more than 50% black. We're over-policed. We're over-profiled.
Yep.
It's not right. We've got to come together as a community and look at this problem honestly and straightforwardly and begin to resolve it. There's some actions that need to be taken immediately to correct this situation.
And one of the first actions that we can take is, again, we are going to come out of this conversation demanding that there be a meeting about this investigation from the current acting sheriff. We're also encouraging everybody, please ensure that you come to settings where we can hear from our candidates about these issues. So there will be one such forum tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. at the Bethel Church. We invite everybody to come out and participate in this opportunity. 7 o'clock, I'm sorry, I missed the time, 7 o'clock p.m. at the Bethel Church, so we can discuss issues of importance across our community. This is so critical. And that's how we're able to have this conversation from our future candidates as well. And everybody needs to vote.
There'll be another one, at Mount Olive on Friday evening at 6 o'clock.
And there will be another one 6 o'clock Friday evening. The investigation needs to be as deep and as wide as it has to be. Well, we're asking for as deep and a wide of an investigation as necessary. So if it includes that, we go as deep and wide as we need to go. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. Yes, indeed. And Friday evening, Mount Olive.
Thank you.